The 1.2 update has officially been released for Total War Warhammer 3, bringing alongside it a whole host of Regiments of Renown. We're going to be taking a look at those today, doing some testing and so forth. A typical caveat for my testing videos should be stated up front. Take all of this testing with a pallet of salt. These clean 1v1 engagements is not how this game works at all in practice, so your mileage may vary. This is just sort of to give us an idea of a baseline performance of a unit unsupported, although again, this is not how the game works in practice, so don't take any of this as complete gospel. But what have we got in this first test? Samurai Warrior of the Legio Italica channel helped me out. Definitely go check them out if you speak Italian or if you want to see some Italian Total War related content. First, we're going to be getting a baseline of the new Cathay and infantry. So all of the Regiments of Renown, except for the Ogres, are the standard elite infantry of their given faction. So for Cathay, we've got the Celestial Dragon Guard Halberds. For Nurgle, we've got the Festering Stooges, which is probably my favorite name of any ROR ever. And then, of course, the Bringers of Beguilement, the Exalted Demonettes of Slaanesh for Slaanesh. You'll notice that the Demons of Chaos can take all of the demonic Regiments of Renown, which is just great. So what do they bring to the table? Well, the Dune Dragons here, the Regiment of Renown Celestial Dragon Guard, have, of course, better stats, being Regiments of Renown. They also pick up magical attacks, which will certainly help against demons. 20% spell resistance as well, plus encourage to help their fellow Cathayan units stand and fight. For the Exalted Demonettes, they trade their Charmed effect on contact for Rampage, and also pick up Perfect Vigor, which is just great for a fast attack unit, and that Rampage means that nothing will be able to get away from them once caught. Festering Stooges here pick up two of the strongest types of abilities Regiments of Renown can get, Terror and Regeneration. Both of them are conditional to being in melee though, and at least the Gloom of Flies here does need to be in melee for 15 seconds to charge up, but then confers Terror and +9 melee defense. The Festering Gate, of course, is just Regeneration, does resurrect dead combatants as well, it should be noted. So this first test is going to be testing the Dune Guard, the Dune Dragons, against elite demonic infantry. We've also got some regular Exalted Plague Bearers, some regular Exalted Bloodletters, and regular Bloodletters as well, just to see how the Dune Dragons hold up to all of this elite demonic infantry. Now, obviously, the high melee defense, the expert charge defense, both of these will help mitigate the offensive output of especially like the Bloodletters and the Exalted Demonettes. Let's get in here and watch up close. The Beguilers, looking very cool. They are just recolors, as most RORs are, of course, but the Death's Heads chucking in here. They're going to do an extreme amount of damage with their volleys, but then really fail to do a lot in terms of damage output in melee. Same thing over here with the regular Exalted Plague Bearers. The Bloodletters, though, doing okay. This is one that I would hope that the Dune Dragons would trade well against, because the Dune Dragons are so much more expensive. If they can hold off infantry that's sort of designed to counter the regular Celestial Dragon Guard, like these Bloodletters, right? And against a normal Celestial Dragon Guard, they would trade very cost effectively. So let's see how that engagement plays out. Death's Heads have been thrown, so those guys can move into combat now. The regular Exalted Demonettes of Slaanesh, again, this is not a combat you would want to take anyway, even against a regular Celestial Dragon Guard. Just a straight up frontal charge right in the face really isn't the best way of using the Exalted Demonettes, but even with the Charmed effect lowering their melee attack down to 35, that's 60 melee defense. This means they can stand firm against the high-ish attack of the Exalted Demonettes there, so pretty good stuff so far. You can see that the effects are now popping off for the Festering Stooges. They've got their melee defense, Terror, and Regeneration. The Terror isn't applicable because the Celestial Dragon Guard, the Dune Dragons, do have immune to psychology, but still, it's something. And that melee defense does put them up to 59, so both of these troops are going to have a pretty hard time making consistent contact with each other. Let's see, Bringers of Beguilement are winning. It is a pretty bloody fight for them. Very attritional warfare there, but still doing okay. Meanwhile, out on the other side, the Dune Dragons are holding off the Bloodletters quite admirably. So we do have a few tests to get through. Let's fast forward through the rest of this one, and we'll kind of keep the wide view here of all these different fights. Celestial Dragon Guard do end up beating out the regular Bloodletters, losing to the Exalted Bloodletters. They do actually beat out the Exalted Demonettes, but lose to the Regiment of Renown, Bringers of Beguilement. Same thing with the Plague Bearers, actually, despite the fact that the Plague Bearers did a huge amount of HP damage with their initial volleys of the Death's Heads. You can see they came in here, and actually the Dune Dragon's 60 melee defense, plus 60 at least with Harmony, I should say. They were able to hold on for the win there against the Exalted Plague Bears, so very impressive performance, all things considered. These Demonettes are now going to get in here, and we'll just have some fun cleanup phase. In terms of use cases, out of the units that we've seen here, I definitely think for Cathay, the Celestial Dragon Regiment of Renown Halberd will be one that you want to take in at least 3 out of the 4 demon matchups. I'm not sure about the Tzeentch matchup, but I would say definitely Slaanesh, Khorne, and Nurgle all have very good use cases, or units you would want to use them against. And just in general, the high armor, high defense helps in a lot of situations. The fact that they can stand firm and even trade well against some infantry, which is designed to counter other armored infantry like these Bloodletters, definitely a good sign. They all perform pretty admirably, all things considered. Yeah, a little bit of a rough situation against a few of the more elites, but to be expected. I mean, these are significantly more expensive. These Bringers of Beguilement and the Festering Stooges are both like 1,400 points plus, so you would hope that they would perform within that price range and be able to defeat these guys. I think these guys are like 1,250, I want to say. I'll have to check that in just a minute on the Dune Dragons. But very impressive performance, honestly, from the Dune Dragons and also from these 2 demonic RORs. This Festering Stooges, the fact that they have Regeneration and Terror means they're going to be seen in almost every matchup, most likely. I mean, those are typically historically, 2 of the most powerful Regiment of Renown abilities that you could get. So the fact that they have both of them, plus a very potent shooting attack, plus they're just a very tanky, a decent infantry overall, I can see these guys being very nasty to deal with. The Bringers of Beguilement is typical of Slaanesh, requires some high skill to use effectively, but they will be ridiculously strong in the right situation, being able to lock down, especially like a spellcaster or other character that has abilities that can no longer use them due to the Rampage. That is one of the best uses for Rampage, and the fact that you have it on a unit this fast means that pretty much only like horse, speed, or faster characters are going to be able to even hope to get away. And then again, if they do get caught in that Rampage procs, they're pretty much just done, right? So very glass cannon, very finely crafted tool, so to speak, will be good in the right hands. Like I said, the Celestial Dragon Guard, I think, are going to be pretty universally applicable. I don't know if I would take them. Maybe against Kislev too, actually, to help deal with some of the cavalry and sleds and whatnot. But definitely against some of the demonic factions. In the future, probably against things like Undead, of course, as well, but definitely seems solid. So, without further ado, let's get on to the next test and check out some Man-Eater pistols. For this next test, we're actually going to be doing a few different tests at the same time. First is Giant Scott missile resistance. Not that we're necessarily testing that, but it is just something worth pointing out. The Regiment of Renown, Pink Horrors of Tzeentch. Let's take a look at them now. We're going to be testing out their ammo refill ability. They've got this right here. One-time use, area of effect. So 55-meter radius, meaning you could, in theory, you could hit your whole army with this. It's probably going to be pretty hard to pull off in practice, but even still, a one-time use refills ammunition. So we're going to see how much that refills off of these Soul Grinders. Soul Grinders just shooting the Giant for the time being. So that's what they got. These Pink Horrors. They also got extra range as well. Up to, or sorry, no, I'm thinking of the Powder Guts. Sorry. They get Warp Flame. That's right, which is not wildly useful considering you have it on a lot of other effects and spells and things, units with Tzeentch. It's not particularly unique to these guys to have this, so not the craziest about this, but it's okay. These guys are more about the ammo refill than anything else. I'm not sure if that will end up being worth it. We'll have to see. But in terms of the Man-Eater pistols, as mentioned, they do have longer range. They also have this insanely strong ability here. Anytime they're losing in combat, they're going to get a huge melee attack and melee defense buff. This makes them exceptionally hard to snipe in melee, and while Man-Eater pistols, I think, did get an overall nerf in the last patch, their missile damage, or in this 1.2 update, I should say, These guys are still going to be potentially very strong. They are super expensive, though, coming in at 1950. Definitely the most expensive out of the current batch of RORs that we have received. So almost 2,000 points for a ranged monstrous infantry with only 40 armor is risky. But in matchups where they're not at too much risk of getting shot, I think these guys could be ridiculously strong considering their high melee stats. We'll see that in just a minute, but for the time being, let's check the ammo on these soul grinders. So we got 1, 1, 1, and 0. So 3 with 1, 1 with 0. Let's see how much ammo it refills. My guess is it's a percentage base like all of their ammo refills are, but unfortunately it doesn't show us the values there. So refills 3 for all of them, including the one that only had 0 left, right? The one that didn't have 1 left. So it actually gave them all 4 ammunition, which is interesting. I guess I probably should have done some extra testing to determine if it was, in fact, percentage-based. I assume that it is, because that's how the ammo refills have worked in the past, from, like, gunnery white and so forth. But anyway, the dwarfs and such. But now we're going to get in. And again, this isn't a specific test. I would expect at 1950, the powder guts here to be able to overcome the blazing squealers just straight up in a ranged combat, especially given their longer range. They're going to be able to open up shots before the squealers can even get into range. But let's see how cost-effective it is. The other group is going to get shot by the Soul Grinders a bit and then charged, and we'll see how they perform in melee against a few, not necessarily fully elite monsters, but a monstrous presence, certainly. This could be comparable to quite a few other monsters. But notice how, even with the Warp Flame, these guys are not taking that much damage. Granted, I did put a Troll Guts onto them there, and it looks like some of the horrors are actually just shooting directly into the ground in front of them, which is kind of hilarious. But anyway, maybe they're getting hit by the pistol shots, actually. Yes. Man-eater pistols doing some nice damage here. Rating okay so far. They're through the barrier. Meanwhile, Bull Gorger over here to juice up these guys, give them some extra melee attack and weapon strength. They're currently winning this combat decisively, so they won't be getting their little buff. But one thing to notice also about this ROR is they seem to have primarily feathered floppy hats. It's just great. As an Empire enjoyer, I'm a big fan of this aesthetic personally. There you go. But now you see they're losing. They go up to 74-76 on attack defense with this adaptive tactics ability procced. Very, very strong. I can see this being very oppressive against factions like Nurgle or Khorne or Slaanesh, where they're relying on their melee units to try and take out these Man-Eater's pistols. It's like, yes, you can beat them, but even while you're beating them, you're still potentially getting absolutely creamed here, right? Anyway. Yeah, so far, we see, once again, Blazing Squealers losing, as expected, to the Powder Guts, but it's not exactly a cost-effective trade. The other ones are trading much more cost-effectively. Combat back down to even, so they no longer get that huge buff, but we'll watch for it here as Scrag gets absolutely deleted. They did say they were fixing the flying unit's pathing charge with single entities in this patch. It doesn't look like that is actually the case, unfortunately. But another Bull Gorger there, putting them up to 74, even without that losing in combat effect. Looks like, yeah, the Powder Guts here, this unit able to finish off. Pink Horrors now turning to shoot. Yeah, man, that the Powder Guts here definitely looking pretty potent. Right now, they're holding the line admirably against 4 Soul Grinders, which is, like, you know, almost 8,000 points worth of monster there that they are holding on against, once again, popping into losing combat momentarily, juicing their stats. And I think as long as they stay in losing, yeah, you can see that this ability keeps refreshing as long as they stay losing combat. So a little bit of final transmutation here to take out this other unit of Powder Guts and Eater's Pistols. More Bull Gorger on them, juice up their melee attack. With the Bull Gorger and that other effect, they're up to 98 melee attack with the adaptive tactics and the Bull Gorger, so pretty impressive stuff, honestly. We'll fast forward through the rest, as it's basically just going to be more of the same. Unfortunately, I don't quite have enough left in the tank to grind through the rest of the Soul Grinders, but very impressive performance, certainly, from these Powder Guts. Both of them managed to pay for themselves. Again, 1950 is a lot. You definitely need them to do a lot of work for them to pay off, but both of them did in this specific test situation, which you should definitely not take as a real-world situation. But anyway, the Blazing Squealers did end up paying for themselves too, even though they lost that engagement. You know, tactically not great for them to do so, but they still were able to pay for themselves, which is nice. You know, even just in terms of raw damage value, plus the extra damage enabled on the Soul Grinders via their ranged attacks from that extra, whatever, 4 volleys they received, right? So very interesting stuff. In terms of use case, I do think, like I said, against the non-missile factions, these powder guts are going to be a staple for sure. The Blazing Squealers, I'm a little bit hesitant to make a prediction as to where they'll be used most. Personally, I need to play around with them a little bit more and see. The ammo refill seems nice on paper, but in practice, I don't know how reliable it will be to get it. Maybe in Domination, if you can take them as a reinforcement unit, bring them in the mid to late game to a point where you have a bunch of like blues and pinks that are out of ammunition already. Maybe use it to refill like a ton of units at the same time. Could be a good use case for it there. But I mean, Exalted Pink Horrors were already a unit that weren't taken super often before, so I don't see the Regiment of Renown sort of picking up that trend at all. We'll see. It remains to be seen, certainly. Maybe I'll be proven wrong, which I would gladly be proven wrong. But anyway, we've got a couple more tests to get through. Got the nice Zarguard unit to look at, so let's get to it. And now for the Red Zarguard. Well, yes, the Red Zar is here also, but specifically the Red Zarguard, Daw's Hearthblades. They come in with some fire resistance, which will certainly be useful against both Tzeentch and Khorne. They've also got flaming damage themselves, and also come with the one-time use of the Daw's Song of Winter Sunlight ability that comes on the Patriarch and Constantine. Yeah, and then they're just Zarguard with great swords, so definitely everything to offer there. Up against Exalted Bloodletters of Khorne and the Hellforged Host Regiment of Renown. These guys get an upgraded version of Hellblade that gives them additional 5 melee attack and takes half as many kills to charge up, and they also get an additional plus 20 armor, putting them up to 60, which is decent. It's not amazing, but it's definitely better. Absolutely. So the fire resistance of the Daw's Hearthguard will come into play here, certainly. Their own fire damage won't necessarily, but let's see how they do. We're going to keep all the unit cards up. Yes, I will concede that these tests have not been performed on perfectly flat ground. We don't have my preferred testing maps for Warhammer 1 and 2 available in Warhammer 3, so we've got to make do with what we got. This is the best one I can find given the time limitations that I'm under today. Anyway, on the charge there, you can see that the Exalted Bloodletters here, the regular Exalted Bloodletters, doing pretty well. The Regiments of Renown doing even better. Certainly this one here in the center is just absolutely mopping this unit of Hearthblades. But let's see, the rest of them are starting to stabilize a little bit. I would expect the Khorne units to win on the charge because of their much better charge bonus. But Kislev units, I mean, they do have more HP per model, I believe, right? They start with more models baseline with a similar HP value. So that being said, this one already popping by our blood passive. Daw's Heartblades here in the center just getting shredded by these elite, super elite Bloodletters. I have to say, out of all the reskins and recolors, the Bloodletters are probably my favorite. Like black and very dark red, just very, very demonic aesthetic looking Bloodletters. I don't know. Personally, I just absolutely love it. I think they look even much better than the regular Bloodletters and the regular Exalteds, but speaking of regular Exalteds, both of them have lost out already. The Daw's Heartblades able to win here, and this one also is going to be a little bit more of a wash. Basically, these units are just trading each other out, which is pretty decent, honestly, for the regular Exalted Bloodletters. Here as well, the Hellforged Hosts, they were able to win one decisively, but the second one is going to be much, much closer. And I haven't hit the Vigor refresh on any of them yet, but I think I'm going to very soon. Have to keep an eye out for that. You can see Boris and the other Zarguard coming forward here. But yeah, this unit of Daw's Heartblades able to finally win out and finish off that second unit of regular Exalted Bloodletters. Now we've got the final clash of fates here. Again, these units basically traded. There's 23 of the Bloodletters left. My Daw's Heartblades finally break with only 9 unit models left. Now for the last sort of re-engagement here in the center, these two units that had won their respective fights. You can see the Vigor refresh has been affected there. These Hellforged Hosts are very tired, whereas the Daw's Heartblades are fresh. So a little bit of a factor in this very late game engagement. Let's fast forward and see if that's enough to help this unit of Daw's Heartblades win. It looks like, and again, this is a lot of RNG too, which is why you should take all this testing with a massive pallet of salt, but it looks like the Exalted Bloodletters are just barely able to win that. Definitely could have gone either way there at the end, but so in both on both occasions, we've had engagements that were incredibly close, right? It definitely, no doubt about it, the Hellforged host is a better Exalted Bloodletter of Khorne. No question there. But I have to say I'm quite impressed by the performance of the Daw's Heartblades, and I hadn't realized when I was actually doing the test with Samurai Warrior, but the flaming resistance, the fire resistance, I do feel is a pretty big determining factor in this specific engagement. So because of that flaming resistance and the fire damage, I do think this unit could see use against Khorne. I do think it could see use against Tzeentch, potentially. Also against Nurgle for sure. Constantine can give you fire damage on all units in an area of effect around himself while he's in melee. But if you don't want to be tied to taking Constantine, like here, I took Boris for this test, and Boris is certainly a good option, especially against somebody like Khorne or Nurgle. You know, you want to have that little bit of extra fire damage push. These guys will allow you to bring that. So definitely looking forward to using them more myself. A little bit of a mixed bag in terms of value, but a couple of them do pay for themselves. On the Exalted Bloodletter side, very consistent that the two RORs would overvalue. I mean, I kind of expected to see that, to be honest. Pay for themselves, then some. These other two, I mean, one of the Exalted Bloodletters does pay for themselves, one of them does not. So interesting to see there, kind of the difference that crumbling mechanic can make, whereas even just on a quick like break, even just a few seconds, Bloodletters are fast enough to mop up and get that extra value off of the Zargard. But anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed watching this. I do have one more test to get through. Very quickly, we're going to run through these Zargard versus the Festering Stooges, so let's get gross with it. For these last two, we're actually going to do two back-to-back tests of the same, with the Festering Stooges versus the Daw's Heartblades. One test, they will throw the Death's Heads, and one test, they will not throw the Death's Heads. So on this first one, they're going to chuck the Death's Heads, and you can see just the extreme damage being dealt to those Daw's Heartblades before they even get into combat. Like down to 25% HP, roughly, a little bit over maybe, 25% HP on each of these units, but still very, very impressive from the Death's Heads. And then, as expected, the Daw's Heartblades just don't have enough left in the tank, although they do get some okay damage in. They are going to get easily bested by the Festering Stooges. But let's load up one more test. We're going to do the same thing again, except this time the Death's Heads will not be allowed to use their ranged attack, the Festering Stooges, and they're just going to charge straight into combat without shooting at all, and let's see how much of a difference it actually makes. See if the Zargard are able to win, or at least trade evenly, and then we'll finish it up by just looking through all the units' costs and kind of doing a final summary. So yeah, no Death's Heads this time. On the charge, you can see that the Festering Stooges are going to take damage. That flaming damage of the Daw's Heartblades will reduce the healing that the Festering Stooges are receiving, so all that working together is definitely going to help the Zargard, the Hearthblades here, win, which they're going to pretty decisively in the center. That being said, I mean, I say pretty decisively, it does start to drag out a little bit towards the end as the regeneration kicks in pretty heavy. And this is close enough that even just one volley of the Death's Heads might be enough to turn this in favor of the Exalted Plaguebearers, the Festering Stooges. They are definitely holding out for quite some time, but no question, Zargard were able to win that without the Death's Heads. So, interesting stuff. Let's go ahead and just compare the unit value real quick as we finish up here. So, yeah, 1450 for the Bringers of Beguilement. Because they're so squishy for how expensive they are, most people probably aren't going to be using these. Then again, if you're playing Slaanesh, you kind of already signed up for that. So, maybe they will get some use. For Cathay here, like I said, Dune Dragon's already sort of said my piece against them. They'll be good against demons, I think. For Khorne, this Hellforged host, I'm not really sure. I need to play around with him a little bit more and see. But, I mean, Exalted Bloodletters are already very good against Nurgle, so it could definitely be good in that matchup as well. maybe against Cathay or some other factions with armored infantry, like even Kislev, to be honest. Kislev themselves, Daw's Heartblades we talked about. Against Khorne could be nice for the fire resistance. Against Tzeentch for the fire resistance, for the fire damage. Against even Cathay as well as Nurgle, of course. Cathay can do some healing, and the anti-infantry damage would be somewhat useful there. Likewise, I also just remembered that the rockets deal fire damage, so this would mitigate a little bit of damage from the rocket fire as well. Actually, quite a few matchups where I could think the Heartblades might be used. For Nurgle, yeah, Festering Stooges you're going to see pretty much all the time, I think. We'll see them in basically every game. Any non-missile factions, we'll be seeing the Powder Guts pretty substantially. And then for Tzeentch, I'm not really sure where the Blazing Squealers fit in yet, but it remains to be seen. I'll have to get some practice games and come back to you once I have more of a conclusion there. So hopefully you enjoyed all that. If you do like this sort of content, found it useful, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification, share it with a friend, all that jazz. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.